It was Friday afternoon, 16th, or if you prefer, 4 p.m. for those not familiar with the military time we use in law enforcement. By this time of day on a Friday, it's usually pretty quiet in any government office, and our office at the Mason County Sheriff's Department was no exception. The employee shift had already ended at 3:00 p.m., and most of the employees working normal office hours had left early, using some of their unused comp time to do so. My captain and deputy sheriff, Benito Ben Villanueva, left at noon that day to take his family on a mini vacation to the Twin Cities for the weekend. For my part, I was eagerly awaiting the return of my day shift lieutenant, Deputy Christopher Hayes, from an important assignment I had assigned him earlier in the week. My name is Sean Patrick Quinn Juar, but everyone calls me Pat. I am the newly elected and sworn-in sheriff of Mason County. This day ended my first official week in office since I took the oath of office last Monday morning. I assigned Chris Hayes to complete the task immediately after my swearing-in ceremony and originally planned for him to complete the task that same day. But I changed my mind and decided that he would wait until that day to carry it out. One of the duties of lieutenants is to serve warrants, notices, and official documents on individuals when required. It costs the average person $80 to use the sheriff's office to serve official documents. For me, it was money well spent. So I assigned my good lieutenant the task of serving my soon-to-be ex-wife, Clarissa, with divorce papers this afternoon. So I sat in my office, eagerly awaiting his arrival to find out how it all went. At approximately 4:03 p.m., a very angry LT, Chris Hayes, burst into my office. "Next time you decide to get a divorce, Pat, serve the damn papers yourself." I assume the presentation of documents did not go smoothly. I laughed. "Look at me, Pat," Chris said, gesturing toward his right cheek. My entire cheek and right ear were beet red. "That stupid bitch hit me right in the face." What is she doing? I couldn't believe what I just heard. I didn't stutter. I handed her the damn papers, and she punched me right in the face. "Oh my God," I burst out laughing. "That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Please, for the love of God, tell me you're not kidding." "Hell no, I'm not kidding," he said, sitting down in front of my desk. She came out to the door, and I politely asked her if she was Clarissa Marie Quinn. She said yes. I said, "Clarissa Marie Quinn, you've been handed it." That's all, hitting me right on the right cheek and ear. Do you know how much it hurts to get hit in the ear, Pat? It fucking hurts, even if it's a woman. Sorry, I said, trying to stop my laughter. "I'm not laughing at you getting hit. I'm laughing at that stupid woman for losing her cool like that." Then the final thought popped into my head. "Oh my God, please, for the love of God, tell me you were in your vest camera when this happened. Please tell me you were smart enough to turn it on when it happened." "What? The best camera? Of course it was on. How stupid do you think I am?" "Ah, I got it. Now Chris understands. This summer and fall, I actually acted as sheriff while my predecessor, William Bud Roberts, was incapacitated and absent as sheriff. So not only was I campaigning to become the next sheriff after Bud, but I was also managing the day-to-day operations of the entire department. One of the best decisions I made was to use the confiscated and seized money to buy wolf cams for every deputy in the department. The cameras were attached to uniform shoulder straps and provided 1080p high-definition video and crystal-clear audio, recording any incident the deputy might encounter. The video was recorded via Bluetooth to the vehicle's in-vehicle video recorder, which also recorded video and audio from the deputy's cruiser dashboard camera. Every department that has begun using these cameras has seen a significant decrease in the number of complaints filed by citizens who have attempted to accuse us of harassment or excessive use of force. In fact, complaints were still made, but they were usually withdrawn when the perpetrators or their families saw video of the event. The cameras were only half the size of a palm. My deputies initially had mixed feelings about the cameras. On the one hand, they seemed to feel that Big Brother was watching them. But the video has already corroborated at least 6 of my deputies' accounts of various incidents that led to citizen complaints. All 6 complaints were withdrawn after the parties and their lawyers, of course, had a chance to see the video. I was absolutely delighted as I couldn't wait to see the video. Hopefully, this will give me all the proof and momentum I need to put my plans to divorce my cheating wife into action and dictate the terms of the divorce on my terms. Chris retrieved the video data from his cruiser and downloaded it to my laptop. The video began with Chris calmly walking towards the steps leading up to the front porch of my farmhouse. He rang the bell twice before Clarissa finally appeared. When she did, you could clearly see the shock on her face at seeing the deputy at her door. "Yes, can I help you with something?" she asked. "Are you Clarissa Marie Quinn?" asked Chris. "Yeah, well, you know I'm like that." "What's this about?" "Madam, I am Deputy Lieutenant Chris Hayes," he said, handing her a folder. "Mrs. Izzy Quinn, you have officially been awarded." "What? Are you kidding me?" "No, madam, it's been handed to you." "Oh my God, I can't believe it. I can't believe that coward sent one of his damn deputies to do this." "Have a nice day, ma'am," Chris said, turning and walking back to his cruiser. "Hey, damn it." Clarice moved after him, pushing him half kick and half punching him in the back. "I'm not done with you yet. Tell that bastard he needs to be home for dinner. I'm not accepting this. Tell him to come home so we can discuss this." "Madam, you need to calm down. I will not tolerate you touching me aggressively." Chris tried to remain calm. "So what? What the hell are you going to do about it? You're just a worthless substitute. You're a nobody." "Madam, I'm warning you. You need to step back and calm down." "Oh, now you're trying to order me around? You don't order me around. I'm still the sheriff's wife, you idiot." She continued to walk towards him, waving the folder as if threatening to hit him with it. "Tell Patrick that he must be home by 6 o'clock. Don't dare go to his mistress on the north side." "Madam, calm down now." Chris put out his hand to stop her, but instead of calming down, Clarissa went completely mad. "Get your damn hands off me, you idiot," she screamed, swatting his hand away. "You never have the right to touch me." And then, slap, Clarissa hit poor Chris right on the right side of his face. "And tell that damn idiot to come home right now," she shouted, turning around and walking back into the house. "Oh my God, that was fucking amazing," I said, bursting into hysterical laughter again. "But damn it, Chris, why didn't you arrest her right away?" "To tell you the truth," Chris said, "I was too stunned to know what to do. I wasn't sure if I should take her away in handcuffs or just let you deal with this stupid bitch. So I came back here and I decided to dump this on you. Figure it out yourself." "Oh, no, 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 no. Absolutely not," I scolded him. "You're going to go back there and arrest her for assault on a law enforcement officer. That's what you're going to do." "Are you kidding me, Pat? Are you seriously going to drag me into this?" "Buddy, you're already at it. Besides, don't you want a little revenge? Don't you think it would be cool to be the one to take her to jail? Take her picture for the mugshot?" Chris thought for a moment and sighed. "You're making a tempting argument, I admit, but I'm not going alone. If she pisses me off even more than she already has, I might just use a taser and maybe shock her. I can't help but think that would be some kind of blemish on my impeccable career. Pat, do you realize this will probably end up in the papers and all that? Don't worry about it. I'll handle it. And she can't stay here, you know. Our jail is full. She'll have to go to the Choctaw County Jail tonight, and it's a 2-hour van ride. Not our problem. She arranged this for herself in every sense, and now she has to go to the bed she made." "So, are you sending someone with me or what?" Chris asked. "Who is the duty lieutenant now?" I asked. "Angel Ryerson." "Great. Have Angel and one of her deputies meet you. Make a nice little show of power out of it." "Won't this scare your kids, Pat?" "No. They're spending the weekend with a youth group from St. Matt's. They went to the Twin Cities to stay at a hotel with an indoor water park and have fun at the Mall of America. They'll probably spend most of the weekend at the pool or Camp Snoopy." "I thought it was called Nickelodeon Now or something," Chris said, picking up his hat. Yeah, I think you're right. But everyone I know still calls this place Camp Snoopy. Okay, Pat, I guess it's time to go arrest your stupid wife. Good luck. Call me when you're done. Needless to say, Clarissa's arrest did not go well, at least for Clarissa. She behaved in such a way that she almost received an additional charge of resisting arrest. The video showed LT. Angel Ryerson, who was a dynamo at just 5'3", literally threw Clarissa off on our front porch, while another deputy, Brad Lowe, handcuffed her and read her rights. Clarissa was hysterically screaming and yelling at Brad, Angel, and Chris the entire time, threatening to sue them for unlawful arrest, excessive force, and anything else she could think of. But it was captured on video in all its 1080p glory and perfect audio that captured every curse, sneeze, and sob. The video also included footage of her being handed my papers, just in case, and no judge could say that the three deputies did not conduct themselves with the utmost professionalism at all times. By 6:30 p.m., Clarissa had been photographed, fingerprinted, and booked into the Mason County Jail. By 7 p.m., she was wearing a red and white prison uniform and a pair of red Crocs. She cried hysterically as she was led to a van that would transport her nearly 2 hours south to the Choctaw County Jail near Cherokee Flats. The Choctaw County Jail could hold 240 inmates, while our jail could only hold a maximum of 40, and a full jail meant it was literally bursting at the seams. This was a situation that I was determined to correct as sheriff, and it was one of my priorities. Since the small causes judge didn't work on weekends, except to issue emergency warrants, Clarissa had, for the most part, the next 72 hours to sit down and think about her actions. A quick call to my colleague in Choctaw County, Sheriff Garrett Myers, ensured that Clarissa would have a cell alone and away from other inmates who might try to harm her while she was there. Sheriff Myers also promised that his correctional officers would monitor Clarissa closely and maintain strict confidentiality. She will be processed in their prison under a false name, so no one will know she is there or who she is. Chris Hayes sent me an MMS with a photo of Clarissa upon booking. She was pathetic in every way. She was still a very beautiful woman in all physical respects, but the photograph was not a photograph of a young, cheerful, or confident woman. It was a photograph of a woman who had hit rock bottom and was beginning to understand the consequences of her actions over the past 2+ years. Her eyes expressed the horror and fear of all humanity, and her face was frozen with an expression of hopelessness and despair. In fact, her face reminded me of the many photographs of men and women who have been brought into thousands of prisons throughout our country throughout history. Clarissa had never looked like a criminal a day in her life, but I couldn't help but notice how the photograph instantly gave her the image of a common criminal. It was ironic that the photograph, for all its bleakness, also matched the image in my head of the woman Clarice had become since the beginning of her affair with Bud Roberts. It's amazing how a simple photograph can remind us that the line between the cream of society and its dregs is very thin. I plan to spend most of the weekend with my new fiancée, Shannon Sullivan, and her amazing daughter, Bridget. After the incident with Clarissa's arrest, I had to stop by the farm to feed the horses and do a few other things. I didn't arrive at Shannon's until 7:30 p.m. around the same time Chris Hayes sent me a photo of Clarissa. I walked through the front door of Shannon's cozy home and was immediately greeted by the smell of home-cooked food that instantly reminded me of the many meals my dear grandmother prepared. Shannon and Bridget had just gotten home a little earlier than me, as Shannon's shift in the IQ at Holy Family Medical Center had ended at 7:00 p.m., after which she had to pick Bridget up from a friend's house where she had gone after school on the days when Shannon was working. "Patrick!" Bridget screamed, rushing towards me from the kitchen. "Hi, Bridget," I said, picking her up for a hug. "How are my two favorite girls in the whole world?" "Wonderful. I've been waiting for you all day, Patrick. Would you like to see my insect collection?" "I would love to, dear, but why do you collect insects in winter?" "Mom and I caught insects last fall, silly. Their teacher put out a collection of all the kids and just sent them home today," Shannon explained, moving in for a kiss. Her voice became softer as she smiled and said, "What's up, handsome?" "Better now," I replied after a delicious kiss. "Bad day at work?" "I'll tell you after dinner." "Okay," she said with a look of concern. Bridget spent the next 20 minutes telling me about her insect collection and her day at school until Shannon set down a plate of meatballs and mashed potatoes. I couldn't believe she was able to cook such a comforting dinner so quickly. It turns out that Shannon likes to cook 5 or 6 full meals on the weekend and then freeze them, so all she has to do is take them out and reheat them in the oven. I could only hope to run the sheriff's office as efficiently as Shannon ran her home. This only confirmed that I had indeed made the right choice. After dinner, I helped Shannon and Bridget clear the table and did most of the dishes, which was my duty after such a wonderful meal. We played a board game that Bridget absolutely loved. Then it was time for Bridget to go to bed, and I read her a story. Tonight it was The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. With Bridget snuggled in bed, I returned to Shannon in the living room, where she had already changed into pajama pants and a Minnesota State University sweatshirt while sitting with a glass of juice. "No wine today?" I asked. "Not today, love. I have work tomorrow, and I promised Mindy Sutherland I'd be on shift at 6. Mommy will come early to pick up the baby and take her to the ranch for the day." "I see. I'm sure she'll like it. But if you want, you can pour yourself a glass." "I don't mind," I said, heading into the kitchen and pouring myself a large glass of Chardonnay. I'm not such a wine connoisseur that I know which wine to drink when before, during, or after a meal. But Shannon's peach Chardonnay was good, contained alcohol, and suited my simple tastes just fine. I sat down next to Shannon on the couch and took a deep breath, lifting the weight of the day and my first week as sheriff off my shoulders. It's the sign of someone who's had a hard day. I thought everything was going pretty well so far. "That's basically it," I said, taking a long sip of wine. "This day changed everything a little." "Like this?" I looked into Shannon's beautiful eyes and said, "I have assigned Chris Hayes to deliver the papers to Clarissa this afternoon." Shannon tensed and became very wary. "Oh my God, it's finally happened. Are you really getting a divorce?" She grabbed my left hand and I felt it tremble. "This is really happening. We will really be together." Tears began to roll down her right cheek. "Yes, we will, darling," I said, squeezing her hand tightly. "How did she take it?" I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. It was a real train wreck. "How is this? What happened?" "If you must know," I began. "Oh, don't tease me. Tell me what happened." "I sent Chris back to the house along with my evening shift lieutenant, Angel Ryerson, and another deputy named Brad Lowe. I ordered them to arrest Clarissa for assault on a law enforcement officer." Another gasp of shock. "Oh my God, are you kidding me? What the hell are you up to?" "What do you mean, what am I up to?" I said, somewhat taken aback. "Clarissa attacked one of my deputies. She's no different from anyone else. It was a completely unprovoked attack." "I know, but she's still your wife, at least technically. I know she's done a lot of terrible things to you, but arresting her. This is not revenge for all the crap she, Bud, and Marion Lawson pulled. This is a direct result of her getting angry to the point of attacking one of my deputies in an attempt to get to me. It doesn't matter how she or I feel about it. All these issues, there is no excuse for her to hit one of my deputies. I also need to show Chris and my deputies that I will not tolerate any abuse from or towards them." I know," Shannon said, calming down a little. "It's all so shocking that I just can't understand what's going on." "I understand, honey, I understand," I said, squeezing her hand tightly. "How do you think this will affect everything else?" "Well," I mused, "the only thing I can think of is that maybe this will make Clarissa more accepting of the divorce. Maybe with this turn of events, I can use this to get her to look at things that are more reasonable as far as amicable divorce is concerned." Again, surprise on Shannon's face. "Oh my God, Patrick. I don't want to sound unsupportive, but is that why you arrested her? to get your way in the divorce. No, 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 I said decisively, shaking my head. Absolutely not. You can put that thought out of your head right now. I would never do anything like that. If I did that, I would sink to the level of her and Bud Roberts. Make no mistake, Clarissa broke the law when she attacked one of my deputies. This is the reason she spends her weekends in jail. I'll do everything I can to help her get out of this situation in the best possible shape, legally speaking. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to use this to help you and I start our lives together. The best leg possible. And if that can happen by using her arrest to smooth the path to an amicable divorce, then so be it. I promise you that I am not going to use him to try to deceive Clarissa in the divorce itself, just to make her see reason rather than fight the inevitable and help the boys cope with this task as easily as possible. You're right, Patrick. I should know better. You are not that kind of person. I'm very sorry for raising this issue. Shannon leaned over and kissed me as an apology. Don't, I said. I'm counting on you to help me stay afloat. This job has clearly gone to Bud Roberts' head, and I'm counting on you to be my anchor, baby. The next morning, Shannon left for work shortly after 5:15. I rushed out of the house immediately after Shannon's mother, Suzanne, arrived and stayed with Bridget until she got out of bed. I returned to the farm to do some housework and plan what I would do for the rest of the day. My divorce lawyer was a wildcat named Danielle Nichols. She was by far the most formidable divorce lawyer in town, and it was almost certain that Clarissa would have turned to her if I hadn't gotten to Danielle first. I know this because Clarissa called Danielle shortly after I had already hired her, because Clarissa wanted to have a lawyer on hand in case she couldn't talk me out of the divorce. All this happened last fall, even before I handed Clarissa the documents. Danielle was in her office at Brown, Graham, Norris, Slater, and Nichols, even though the firm was closed for the weekend. Given the events of the previous day, I decided that calling Danielle would be appropriate. Predictably, Danielle was foaming at the mouth about what she could do to Clarissa in the divorce proceedings after she was stupid enough to slap one of my deputies. Looking into the eyes of Danielle Nichols, Esquire seemed to be looking into the eyes of Satan himself. I could only be glad that she was on my side. About 15 minutes into the consultation, my cell phone rang. It was a number that I probably shouldn't have had on my phone, but I programmed it anyway. The caller ID read Caroline Bennett. "Hi, Caroline," I said as I answered. "Patrick, thank God I was able to contact you. Could you tell me what's going on with Clarissa? She called me this morning and told me she was in jail at Cherokee Flats and that you were responsible for putting her there." "Sorry," I said to Danielle, covering the phone with both hands. "I need to answer this call. I'll be there in a few minutes. Sorry." "No, don't apologize," Danielle said. "Feel free to stay here. I'll run to the break room and see if we have coffee in this damn place." As soon as Danielle left the room, I continued. "Well, Caroline, the truth is that Clarissa is indeed in prison at Cherokee Flats. There was no room for additional inmates here in Red River Falls, so she was sent to another facility." "Oh my God, Patrick, what could she have done that warranted you putting her in jail?" "Caroline, at the risk of our special friendship, let me be clear. I did not imprison Clarissa out of any malice. I followed the divorce filing procedures and used the sheriff's department to do it. I paid the appropriate fees and all, as any normal citizen would do, to avoid what I thought would have been a definite and disgusting confrontation between Clarissa and myself. Instead, Clarissa initiated an altercation with one of my deputies, during which she became aggressive and slapped my deputy. No, 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 Patrick. You're wrong. Clarissa can be short-tempered at times. Okay, maybe many times. But my daughter would never intentionally hit a law enforcement officer. I just can't believe it. Your officer must be mistaken or exaggerating." "I hate to tell you this, Caroline," I said, sighing, "but the entire incident was caught on video. Cameras and photographs don't tell the whole story, Patrick." "True, but in this case, it's pretty trivial. All my deputies now carry small cameras that record everything in high definition. In this particular case, there might as well have been a TV camera crew filming it. Because there's not much difference, Caroline, you'll understand if and when you watch the video. I heard Caroline sob and try to suppress her own crying. You're welcome, Patrick. If our special friendship means something to you, please promise me that you will do everything you can to help her. Please, for her sake and for the sake of my grandchildren. Caroline, I said, I'm sure I'll do everything I can to help her. I promise you this. I will see her here soon, and I assure you that I will release her on bail no later than Monday morning. And I am also sure that this weekend will be the last time she will see a prison cell. Thank you, Patrick. It means so much to me. You're welcome, Caroline. Oh, Patrick? Yes, Caroline. She paused. Never forget how much you mean to me, Patrick. I know that a new love has appeared in your life. I can only hope and pray that she treats you the way my daughter should have been treated. Now it was my turn to look for something to say. I appreciate it, Caroline, and never forget how much you mean to me. Goodbye, Patrick. We'll talk again soon. I'll be looking forward to it. And then she hung up. After speaking with Caroline, it took me a few minutes to compose myself when Danielle returned to her office with 2 cups of fresh, steaming coffee and placed one on the table in front of me. I could easily see that Danielle had the potential to have her way with me, or with any other man for that matter. She, according to her, was happily divorced. Danielle was previously married to Karsten Brown, who was the Brown of Brown, Graham, Norris, Slater, and Nichols, and who himself was previously happily married to another woman until Danielle joined the firm. Danielle worked as a paralegal at the firm until Karsten Braun's divorce. She then became a partner at the firm shortly after becoming Karsten Braun's bedroom partner. The whole thing was scandalously delicious from a gossip standpoint, which only proves the old saying, "There's not much to see in a small town, but what you hear sure makes up for it." So, Danielle said, settling back into her high-backed chair, let's figure out how we can crush your wife. Danielle thought I was crazy trying to negotiate a fair divorce, since she was quite confident that she could use Clarissa's arrest to get me everything I could want by hanging the prospect of additional prison time on her. In truth, all I wanted from Clarissa was a quick and easy divorce. I just wanted to split what we had $5,050 and share custody of the boys. I wanted the boys to still live with me on the farm, and for Clarissa to be free to visit them after school and every other weekend, and to spend most of the summer months with them. Personally, I think Danielle just wanted to see Clarissa squirm like the proverbial worm on a hook. As for me, I was simply determined to separate myself from her, while preserving her honor, at least in the eyes of our sons. I hoped this would be enough to take her out of the fight. I left Danielle's office just after 9:00 and had to pay a quick visit to another attorney. I drove to the west side of town to a chic little neighborhood called Elk Run Heights. It was one of the new apartment complexes in Red River Falls, filled with the McMansions of Red River Falls influencers. The Fox Run Golf and Country Club was included in the development, and nearly every home had a front lot. Most residents here could either swim in their pools and then sunbathe in one of the sand traps and completely eliminate the need to ever go to the beach, at least in the summer. I walked up to the stately brick house and rang the doorbell. A few moments later, Marion himself appeared. "Jesus," he said when he saw me, "and here my weekend went so well." "I'm glad to see you too, Marion." Lawson just stood there with the door ajar. "Well, aren't you going to invite me?" "Not unless I have a good reason," he grumbled. "Oh, I have business to discuss, I assure you." "Does this apply to me in any way, shape, or form?" "Marion," I said with some harshness in my voice, "everything I do concerns you in one way or another." Marion just rolled his eyes and opened the door to let me in. "My office is inside and to the left. And take off your damn shoes so you don't ruin my hardwood floors. We just stripped them and coated them." "Oh, it's almost like we're going to hang out for a while." "There are no ideas. You won't stay long enough to watch the playoffs, And every beer in the fridge has Marion's name on it, not Patrick. Doesn't matter. The Vikings were knocked out a long time ago. Damn, Pat, for God's sake, the Vikings were relegated after preseason, he grumbled. How can you look at these losers? Hey, 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 now. To hate my team is to hate me, I replied. Do you really want me to fucking answer that, Quinn? Probably not, I agreed. We walked into the house and headed to Marion's office when his wife, Patty Jean, spotted us from the huge open kitchen. Whatever she was cooking smelled fantastic, and my growling stomach reminded me that I hadn't eaten yet. Oh, hi, Sheriff. What brings you today? Patty called from the kitchen. Before I could answer, Marion interrupted. He won't stay long, and we'll be in the office. We have important things to do, so make sure we are not disturbed. Patty Jean looked completely dejected by her husband's rebuke, but she cheered up again when I said, Nice to see you again, Patty. Whatever you're cooking smells amazing, honey. Thank you, Patrick. We'd love for you to join us for dinner someday. And I would love to join you someday. I promise to bring with me a lot of bad jokes and a big appetite. Patty Jean started laughing and Marion practically dragged me into his office, closed the door behind us, and locked it. By the way, you're not coming to dinner, he chided, directing me to a chair in front of his ostentatiously huge oak table. But Patty Jean just invited me, Marion. It would be rude to refuse her. Marion shot me an annoyed look from his equally colorful chair. Did you come here just to piss me off, Pat, or did you really want to talk to me about something? Tell Patty she doesn't need to overdo it. I am a simple person with simple tastes. Damn it, Sheriff. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and gravy. Comfort food is always a favorite for me, especially during the winter months. I bet Patty will work magic with this. It seems like her cooking is definitely helping you maintain that girlish figure, Marion, I chuckled. I'm warning you, Pat. My deputies arrested my wife last night. Lawson's jaw nearly hit the floor. What? Are you fucking kidding me? No, that's not true. Yesterday, she was served with divorce papers, and she attacked one of my deputies. Lawson stared at me with wide eyes. You know, Phil Robertson said it best. You're a special kind of idiot, aren't you, Pat? I mean, oh my God. Who the hell did the people of this county elect as sheriff? They chose someone who doesn't feel like they or their families are above the law. Bullshit. What did she do? Did you bump into him as he walked by? No, she got angry at my deputy and slapped him. We have it all on video. Who? Who what? I asked, confused. Who was the deputy who served her? Lieutenant Chris Hayes. Oh God, Lawson said, making a sour face and shaking his head. Numbers. If this damn idiot isn't doing something right this minute that deserves a slap on the wrist, then the smart money says it's only a matter of time before he does. I shifted in my seat, preparing to defend Chris and Tanya. I assure you that Lieutenant Hayes is not an idiot, and neither is his wife. In fact, she probably has the highest ick in Mason County. Marion stopped. After several tense moments, he said, You didn't come here to talk about Hayes and his wife. What do you want, Pat? As I told you, my wife is in prison for assaulting Hayes. I want you to refrain from making any charges until I tell you to. That's my prerogative, Pat. I'm calling, not you. No, don't. Do I need to remind you about your nasty little hobby? Damn it, Pat, Lawson groaned. You know, I'm the damn district attorney. At some point, you're going to have to give it up and let me do my damn job. I understand it, but not yet. Just refrain from making accusations until I tell you. If anyone asks you about it, which they shouldn't do, just tell them it's an investigation and you'll make a statement when it's completed. How the hell are you going to stop people from finding out about her? She was booked into the Choctaw County Jail under an alias. Garrett Mayers is my friend. He's looking after her. Mayers? Choctaw County Sheriff? Okay, Lawson said, waving me off and rubbing his face. I will refrain from bringing any charges. In fact, I'll pretend I don't know a damn thing about this until late Monday night or until you decide you want to press charges. I'm guessing you're doing everything you can to put pressure on Clarissa during the divorce. No. Well, not quite. Okay, I think a little, but only to make her agree to the divorce itself. The terms that I offer, it's not that it's any of your damn business, but the terms that my offers are damn good. I'm not going to deceive her. She is still the mother of my children. I spent the night at the farm alone, not with Shannon, although I really wanted to stay with her. Who the hell wouldn't want to spend the night making love to this incredible woman? But I decided to spend it on myself and clarify some details in the plans for the upcoming divorce. The next morning, I skipped Sunday Mass and was at my department by 9:00 a.m. in an outdated 2010 Ford Expedition. I caught up with us Highway 120 and headed south towards Cherokee Flats. The trip lasted about 2 hours and was fairly sparsely populated along the way. The road speed itself was 65 mph, so I was riding nice and steady. The Choctaw County Jail was located in the northern part of Cherokee Flats. It was a new building that housed the jail, sheriff's offices, and even a courtroom that served as an ancillary to the county courtrooms. The jail itself was quite impressive and significantly larger than the Mason County Jail, which was still located on top of the Mason County Courthouse. There was a fairly spacious exercise yard enclosed within 3 separate rings of chain-link fence, each topped with 3 rows of razor-sharp accordion fencing. Woe to anyone who was ever foolish enough to try to climb over this peak, let alone those brave enough to do it at least 3 times. The Choctaw County Jail differed from the Mason County Jail in another significant way. It was a visiting room. Visitors were only allowed into both prisons for low-risk inmates. But while visitors to the Mason County Jail could actually see an inmate face-to-face, visitors to the Choctaw County Jail used a video system that allowed visitors to see inmates only on a closed-circuit television screen. The visitors' room was located completely opposite the prison itself, and visitors and prisoners were never within 300 feet of each other. However, if you are an active sheriff whose wife is incarcerated and you are friends with the sheriff whose jail you are visiting, exceptions may be made. Hey, Pat, Sheriff Garrett Mayers welcomed me into his office. He was sheriff of Choctaw County for nearly 20 years. Garrett is about 60 years old, has thick, perfectly styled silver hair, but is still in remarkable shape for his age. How is your first week at work? Everything is going well, Garrett. At least that was the case until Friday. I'm sure. I want you to know that we have been keeping a close eye on her the entire time she has been here. Nobody knows she's here. No one looked for her or asked about her. She's only made one phone call so far, and I think it was to her mother. Yes, I heard from her mother. She knows. If you follow me, Pat, we'll head straight here. While routine visits are conducted by video only, we must provide attorneys with the opportunity to meet privately with their clients, so we have a safe room downstairs, the hall where we will meet you and your wife. Thank you, Garrett. I really appreciate it. Glad to help, Pat. And by all means, stay as long as you need to. Thank you again, Sheriff. I was taken into a small room with a small metal table and 2 metal stools that were securely fastened to the ground, ostensibly to prevent prisoners from throwing them at their lawyers. There was no sound or video in the room to maintain attorney-client privilege. I also grabbed my personal firearm before entering the prison and also went downstairs and conducted an electronic search. I was there about 5 minutes before the door opened. I stood up as Clarissa was led into the room in full shackles, including handcuffs, ankle cuffs, and a chain that went around her waist and held her arms close to her body, as well as connecting to the ankle cuffs. The goal was to make it difficult for prisoners to attack correctional officers, as well as to make escape virtually impossible. A tall, athletic African-American corrections officer led Clarissa to a stool and the opposite end of the table from where I was sitting. After she sat down, the cuffs on her ankles were attached to a hook on the floor, and the handcuffs were attached to a hook on her side of the table, further restricting her movements. Clarissa looked terrible, to say the least. She didn't look at me, doing her best to fight and hold back more tears. "How are you doing, Clarissa?" It was a stupid question, but the only one I could think of. "What do you think?" she answered in barely a whisper. "I understand how you feel." "No, you don't understand," she said as she could no longer hold back her tears. "How could you? How could you do this to me, Patrick?" I leaned over and said, "I didn't do this to you, Clarissa. You're here because you attacked one of my deputies." "I'm sorry," she said, wailing and sobbing. "I was only upset because I thought he came to tell me something bad happened to you." "That's not true, Clarissa, and you know it. You know what are the procedures in the event of an officer falling? Damn, you've been through this before, remember? You knew damn well Chris Hayes wasn't here." "I swear to God, Patrick, I thought so. I don't care what your deputy told you," she sobbed, still unable to look directly at me. "No, Clarissa, you didn't do this. I have it all on video." "How could you see anything? His car was parked in the driveway, Patrick. It's my word against his." "Clarissa, a few months ago, we bought small cameras that deputies wear on their uniforms, just like radios. Cameras saw and recorded the entire event. Chris Hayes walked up to you, handed you the documents, and then walked away back to your car. You deliberately pursued him, were aggressive, and provoked him all the time. He held out his hand to stop you from approaching him, and then you hit Chris on the right side of his face with your left hand. I have all this on my phone. Turn on." I pulled out my smartphone, which Garrett had allowed me to take with me. I picked up the video clip and started playing it. Clarissa initially refused to look at my phone, believing until the last second that the whole situation could not be captured on camera. But as soon as she heard the unmistakable and completely clear sound of her own voice, she immediately stopped crying and stared blankly at the video, too shocked to say anything. When the video ended, Clarissa turned away from me again, only this time out of shame. "Patrick, what will happen to me?" "Well," I said, putting the phone back in my pocket, "it's all up to you. You are now considering a charge of assault, more specifically, assault of a peace officer. This would be an aggravated offense. In theory, you face 2 to 5 years in prison." "Oh my God," she whispered. "Please tell me you're going to help me, Patrick." "I will help you, Clarissa, but you will help me too." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to sign the divorce papers. I want you to accept them, sign them, and make this whole process as smooth and painless as possible for us and for Nick and Jake." "Is that what it's all about? You arrested me so you can get what you want in your divorce. This is vile." She began to cry again and fumed, trying to gather her strength and control her breathing. "No, Clarissa, make no mistake. This is not why you were thrown into prison. You could have easily accepted the papers and lost your cool with me when we spoke again. Instead, you decided to swan dive off the crazy board, and he went straight to jail. Then how will it help me if you divorce me? I'll help you get your charges reduced so you can only get a sentence of time already served. Or, if you're lucky, I can even talk Deputy Hayes into withdrawing the case altogether. But I'll only intervene on your behalf if you agree to make our divorce as painless as possible. Do you agree to this, Clarissa?" She looked up, desperate. "What choice do I have?" "Simple. You can either help yourself or you can't." "But I don't want a divorce, Patrick. How many times do I have to say this? I don't want a divorce. I don't want to separate our family. I want our family to stay together." "Clarissa, do you remember what we talked about before we got married? Do you remember what we said about what would happen if one of us cheated on the other?" Tears started streaming down her face again as she closed her eyes, remembering our conversation a long time ago. "We always said that cheating in our marriage would mean the end. You wouldn't put up with it from me, and I wouldn't put up with it from you. We always said we could handle any situation except infidelity. But I was wrong, Patrick. I think we can get over this if we just work at it. I want to work at it. I want to find a way to love each other again like when we first fell in love. I want us to feel special again. I want to feel that you love me and make love to me like before, Patrick." "You know what I hear, Clarissa? I hear you use the word I a lot. In other words, everything revolves around you. It's all about you. About what you want. You know what I haven't heard yet from you? I didn't hear you say, I'm sorry, Patrick. I'm sorry for the hell I put you through these 2 years. I'm sorry for the pain, suffering, and humiliation I caused you. You, Clarissa. And if you say it now, it won't mean anything, because you're only saying it because you want to get out of here and get out of this predicament. There's no easy way out. But I'm really sorry, Patrick. I'm sorry I didn't say this sooner. But I know we're stronger than we think. I've seen a whole new side of you, Patrick. I admit I took you for granted, but now I see how strong you are. I saw how you fought, and I know that you can fight just as hard for our marriage if you want, she begged and pleaded. But I don't want to, Clarissa. I don't want to fight anymore. I just want this to end. You don't even know what you've done to me. All I see when I look at you is what once belonged to me, but was taken from me. If we ever tried to make love, I would only wonder if you were thinking about Bud Roberts or some other guy you were with, and I would be plagued with questions. Am I strong enough, sexy enough, or good enough as a lover? I would even wonder if you think I'm a good father to our boys. I can't live like this for the rest of my life, Clarissa. Clarissa sat there, sobbing quietly. I hoped it was because the realization of what she had done to me, our marriage, and our family had finally sunk in. But I also realized that it could simply be grief over lost opportunities. Please try, Patrick. I'm begging you. I can't, Clarissa, I said, tears now gathering in my eyes and a lump forming in my throat. There's too much to overcome. I can never, ever forget what you and Bud Roberts did. I know myself well enough to know what I can handle and what I can't. You nearly robbed me of my family and my freedom, Clarissa. There's no going back from this. Just sign the papers. Sign the papers and I'll do everything I can to help you get out of this mess, or at least make it less terrible than it was. If you ever really loved me or cared about me, do it for me. At least you owe me this. Clarissa just held her head in her hands and sobbed for almost 5 minutes. Finally, she tried to gather her courage, wiped away her tears as best she could, and then took the pen I handed her and signed the divorce papers, agreeing to all my terms. I had to pay Clarissa half the cost of the farm and divide our savings equally. I continued to include her in my insurance until she found a suitable job that would provide her with her own insurance, or for 1 year, whichever came first. I helped Clarissa find suitable housing that could serve as a second home for the boys, since the farm remained their primary residence. I also agreed to pay rent for a year to help her get back on her feet and continued to pay for her Explorer until it was paid off in full. I also agreed to pay for her cell phone for at least a year. My divorce lawyer, Danielle Nichols, thought I was crazy for agreeing to such terms. In fact, this may have been the case. But Clarissa's mother, Caroline, was now deeply involved with a man named Martin Belmond, who was a multimillionaire many times over. I had no doubt that Clarissa's mother would do everything possible to help her daughter. I agreed to all these terms because I wanted to ensure that Clarissa was treated fairly and that she could not accuse me of trying to deceive her. Using her time in prison as leverage could make it seem like I was a scoundrel. But if things had turned out differently and Clarissa and Bud Roberts had gotten their way, I would have been much worse off in ways I can't even imagine. Bad things happen to cops who go to jail. However, I had one surprise for Clarissa. I obtained a release order from the magistrate, Judge Hannah Burgeon, allowing Clarissa to be released on her parole. This was quite unusual, especially since I had to call the judge and go to her house to sign the documents. Although Clarissa was being held in the Choctaw County Jail, the case still originated in Mason County, so we still had jurisdiction. I'm sure the public would be outraged by this, but I didn't care anymore. The advantage was that it would make Clarissa happy. The downside is that I would now have to spend the 2-hour drive home with Clarissa. It took about 45 minutes for Clarissa to get ready to leave the Choctaw County Jail. Some of this time was spent allowing Clarissa to shower in private before being released. It took even longer to sign documents and get the few personal items she had. I brought her a complete set of clothes, and by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we left Cherokee Flats and went home. We drove in complete silence for almost an hour before either of us said anything. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "You are hungry?" I asked. Clarice continued to look out the passenger side window and shook her head. "Do you want to stop and at least get something to drink?" "I don't want a divorce, Patrick. I know I signed the papers, but I didn't want it." I kept both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2 and squeezed it in irritation. I took a deep breath through my nose and exhaled slowly. "Clarissa, we've already discussed this. It's already decided as far as I care." She wasn't actively crying, but tears continued to stream down her face. "Well, if this is your way of tormenting me, Patrick, then it works." I couldn't stand it anymore. I braked sharply without locking the wheels and turned the car onto the side of the road, sharply moving the lever to the park position. "Torturing you, Clarissa? What about me? What about torturing me? Do you think living with me would be torture for you, Patrick? God, woman, you really are incredibly stupid. I'm not talking about spending my life with you. I'm talking about everything that would have happened to me if your adventure with Bud Roberts had been a success. But that didn't happen, Patrick, okay? Everything went wrong. Maybe it happened for a reason. Maybe we should stay together. At the very least, you need to learn to move on." "I can't, damn it." "For God's sake, Patrick, why the hell not? Why can't we try to move forward together? Why is divorce the only option?" I turned away from her. She was so blind to her own cunning and absolute insanity that she was now physically and emotionally pushing me away. I sat for a few moments, seeing from the corner of my eye how she looked at me pleadingly. I did my best not to look in her direction. It took all my strength not to burst out, to find a way to remain calm and resist the urge to hit her. And then I thought of Shannon, and that familiar, soothing feeling of calm washed over my body, and I found my center and true purpose in life again. I closed my eyes and imagined the feel of her body, the feminine strength of her embrace, the taste of her lips, and the smell of her soaps, lotions, and perfumes. It was then that I calmed down enough to tell Clarissa what I had been trying to find the strength to tell her all this time. "I can't, Clarissa. There is no way to move on. To do that, Clarissa, I would have to go back to the old me, the one who trusted you and loved you enough to not doubt whether you were cheating on me, the one who never wondered if you loved me back. What you did to me, Clarissa, absolutely changed me on a molecular level, if that's possible. Your affair and the plans you shared with Bud Roberts to absolutely destroy me have turned me into a person I never thought I could be. And this is both amazing and absolutely tragic. To save myself, I had to learn to think as evil as you and Bud. To save myself, I had to learn to scheme and manipulate, beg and borrow and steal to get what I needed to stay free. I broke the laws I swore to uphold in order to serve what I thought was a greater purpose. I tore the legal threads to keep the blanket of justice intact, to protect unsuspecting citizens from dangerous people who would otherwise be free because of what you and Bud Roberts tried to do to me. I have become what I despise, namely, conniving, manipulative, scheming, sneaky, and all the other adjectives and superlatives that can be used to describe me. But I never did any of this for myself. I did it for my boys. I did it for the sake of the public. I did this for you. And I even did it for Bud Roberts and Marion Lawson. There's no blood on my hands, Clarissa, but there's a lot of dirt on them now. I'm no longer the Dudley Durite I used to be. But the upside, Clarissa, is that your actions and Bud's are what made me a survivor. I can honestly say that there is nothing I wouldn't do to protect my family, my friends, and the people of Mason County from harm. I stood at death's door because of my commitment to this cause and came back to tell the tale, both literally and figuratively. I put the car in gear, turned on the turn signal, and pulled the big SUV back onto the highway, heading back to Red River Falls. So, yes, Clarissa, you're right. I really am tough as nails. Fighting for your life, either from death itself or from existing worse than dying in prison, will indeed make you that way. So I won't thank you for destroying our family. But in a way, I'm grateful to you for making me stronger, because I can honestly say that I would never have been ready to become a sheriff if you hadn't. I stopped talking at that point and my soon-to-be ex-wife, and I continued to drive in silence the rest of the way. For Clarissa, this was literally a journey into the future, as she would now have to decide what her future would be like. Only she could determine the direction. The only thing I knew was that her future would not include me, at least not as her husband. When we got home, Clarissa just went upstairs without a word and went to bed. She slept for several hours, probably from sheer exhaustion after the weekend in prison. The boys returned home from a weekend trip with their youth group to the Twin Cities and were enthusiastic to tell us all about it. As I listened to their youthful fervor and excitement, I knew that I would never have arrested Clarissa if they had been home all weekend instead of 200 miles east of here. For me, it was good luck, but for Clarissa, it was bad luck. Eventually, Clarissa came downstairs for dinner. She smiled and greeted the boys, hugging them and kissing their heads. She prepared a light dinner for all of us, consisting of grilled ham and cheese sandwiches. And to my surprise, after dinner, Clarissa asked everyone to stay at the table. I didn't know what would happen next, but she sat down and told the boys the news that we were going to separate. She explained to the boys that we had some serious problems, and that although we both loved Nick and Jake very much, we couldn't stay together, and she was going to move out for a while. Clarissa even went so far as to say that it was a decision she made and begged Nick and Jake not to be angry with me since it wasn't my fault. She lied a little when she said she wasn't sure how long we'd be apart, just long enough for us to work out some of our differences. I'm sure she left everything indefinitely to give the boys time to get used to the fact that we wouldn't be together anymore, and I was grateful for that. She also assured the boys that their home would not change, and that they would remain in the house and small farm with their beloved horses, cows, dogs, and cats. Clarissa assured them that although they would no longer spend time with me and her at the same time, they would still see both of us regularly. She even asked them to help me as much as possible, and also asked them to help her find a suitable place to stay in Red River Falls so that they could spend time there after school before returning home to the farm every evening. To their credit, the boys were sad, but took the news much better than I expected. Of course, there were tears, but none of them went completely hysterical or flared up. Perhaps they suspected, or even expected, that sooner or later everything would end this way. Nick even hinted at this when I was at a law enforcement conference in Minneapolis a year and a half ago. Sometimes we adults don't give our children the credit they deserve for their intuition and perception of the world around them. Within a few days, Clarissa found a very nice apartment in a brand new townhome complex located in a gated community. The complex had its own playground and pool, which the boys would probably enjoy using in the summer, and it was only 6 blocks from the high school they both attended. It didn't take much convincing for Chris Hayes to drop the charges against Clarissa for assaulting a law enforcement officer. I think Chris understood how difficult this would be for all of us, and realized that Clarissa was acting more out of desperate self-defense than out of any real malice towards him or the other deputy. Marion Lawson played by my rules, as I demanded, and Judge Hannah Burgeon did her part to make sure the case went away. If we were ever audited for any reason, people would remember that something happened, but there would be no documentation or reports to clarify what it was. I, of course, never told Clarissa about this to make sure the divorce went ahead. When I told Shannon about all of this, she was incredibly supportive because she knew that the finality of my upcoming divorce was weighing heavily on me, not because I wanted to stay married to Clarissa, but out of grief and regret over a dead and failed marriage. Strangely, I could also now begin to focus on my new life with Shannon and Bridget, which had emerged from the ashes of my previous life with Clarissa. I knew in my heart that my boys would fit in well with Shannon and Bridget and would accept them as a stepmother and stepsister. I'm sure there will be conflicts and setbacks along the way, but my gut tells me that there will be many more great days ahead than difficult ones. And in the end, I even began to hope that one day the right man would appear in Clarissa's life who would bring her the happiness that I could not give her. Another big surprise was my future father-in-law's revelation that his wedding gift to Shannon, and I would be to pay off the mortgage on the farm so Shannon and I could focus on other things rather than working to pay the bank. It was more than I could have ever imagined, more than I deserved, and I was so shocked by his offer that I initially refused. But Jack Sullivan reminded me that I didn't want to get on his bad side, and that there was nothing he wouldn't do for his daughter and granddaughter. He then laughed out loud and gave me a huge bear hug, saying, "Welcome to the family." Thus, one chapter of my life closed, and now the next chapter is ready to be written. All the key characters are in place. There is no need to dwell on the past, only a bright future lies ahead. From this day forward, the only story that will matter is the story we create for ourselves. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.